We also have another one for developers, and that's where people ask questions about developing. I'm writing a program. I just discovered FreeDOS, and I'm trying to write this program. You'll see a lot of questions come up there. Neither one of them is really high volume these days, but that is definitely where we communicate. We also have other discussion forums that we participate in. We have a Facebook group that is actually sort of kind of active. And so I think that works out pretty well. We also, during the pandemic, started doing these video get-togethers, which has been, I thought it was just kind of a neat thing to do because like everyone is knowing how Zoom works these days. And I'm like, well, we'll just do some get-togethers so that people get to know each other as more than just an email address. It turned out to be extremely popular. Like after that first year, after 2020, I thought, well, I didn't think we were going to do any more in 2021. People were like, when's the next one? These are really good, right? So it turns out that's a really interesting way to maintain communication as well. We alternate our topics. We meet roughly once a month, and we alternate our focus. We'll do one meeting where it's about technical issues, where we do live debugging. Someone wants to go over something. And we'll do another one a month later that's meant to be just purely social. And it's a great way to kind of hang out with each other. Number 6, keep it respectful, right? That's an important thing. It needs to have a code of conduct. I've been part of temporarily some other open source software projects that haven't had a code of conduct. People have started to say bad things on their forums, and then the moderators were just like, it's free speech. It kills the community. It kills the community to do that. You have to have a code of conduct so that way people understand what is acceptable, what's not acceptable. We have 3 rules on ours. It's very, very simple. Basically no spam, no bullying, keep it on topic. And that works out pretty well. We've only had to ban, like, if I were to count them out, probably like it would be on one hand. Times we've had to do that. But it does make sure that we keep things, respectful. If you're not going to be respectful, that's not going to help the community, and so you need to maintain that open code of conduct. And then last, it is, of course, about the code as well, right? And so you need to use a recognized open source software license. I've watched other projects that have started up, and there's some other ones that, in retro computing communities, and they've started to do different stuff, and they're not using a recognized open source software license. There are some people who are sort of anti-license, who are like, I'll write my own. And then some people do something with it, and they're like, that's not what I meant you to do with my code. I'm like, well, that's allowed in your license that you wrote. So did you want it to be included in some other thing with no source code? That wasn't in your license, right? So it's the best way to release some of this open source software is to use a recognized open source software license. It's kind of surprising to say it in 2025. I still do find people that try to do stuff kind of on their own. Also, by the way, pay attention to the other licenses that you're using in your project. Right? There's that software bill of materials, open source software bill of materials concept, that you do need to know what other open source libraries, code that you're using, and not all licenses are compatible with one another. So you need to be careful of what things you're using versus what's going to be allowed. But also, if you're going to be open source software, you really should be sharing stuff early and often, right? People are like, oh, it's not ready for release yet. I'm going to share this sort of like with a couple of people so they can test it. And I'm like, the best way to test it is to make it available to everybody. Let everybody see it. And if you think it's unstable, then put a big note on it that says unstable in the version tag. In fact, in the file name, I would probably even put the word unstable. And then people know what they're getting into, right? And we maybe won't roll that into the monthly test release, but maybe we will. It's not something that's going to be critical. We probably wouldn't roll in an unstable kernel as the default kernel on our monthly release, but we would probably make it available as an alternative kernel that you could choose to install if you wanted to, because then you would know that if you're getting an unstable kernel. So share early and share often, right? Make frequent releases. If you go back and look at when FreeDOS was first started, back in 1994, we had releases like weekly. I mean, we were putting out something like weekly. Here's the latest update. There were times that, we had a version control system finally I was putting in stuff daily, multiple times a day. There'd be a release for something. Share early, share often. If you're not sure that something's going to be stable, put a note in it. Be careful about being too frequent if you're making big announcements because people can't download the latest thing. There is eventually going to be a frequency which is going to be optimum. And I would say these days, if you're releasing something more than a couple of days, more frequently than a couple of days apart, you probably want to think about what's being labeled as stable versus unstable. But in general, make frequent releases, right? Even if it's a small update. Is it worth making this version release? Yeah. If you want people to try it, I would say you should release it. And so think about making these frequent releases, even if it's a small update. So with that, I think we're kind of at time, or at least what I thought was on time. And so I'm going to kind of pause there and go for questions. If you want to follow up and ask me an email, there's my email address, jhall@freedos.org. I'll also mention I'm also a writer, and I have a new book coming out very soon, Technical Writing for Developers, by using Markdown and HTML. And we released as part of the APRESS Pocket Guide series. We released that in 2015. But right now I'll go to questions. We have a question over here.
Does FreeDOS have enterprise and commercial applications in retrofitting ancient software and keeping it running?
So the question was, enterprise applications, keeping things running? Turns out, yeah. Yeah, it turns out we actually do hear from people who run FreeDOS in a production mode. Last year, I actually talked with a guy who inherited his dad's wood CNC shop. And all their machines, they have like 5 machines, all their machines run DOS. And his dad had updated all the machines to run FreeDOS. So this guy had inherited from his dad, and his dad passed away. And he's like, my business runs on FreeDOS, and I have no idea how FreeDOS works. And so I had to kind of teach this guy how FreeDOS works. We've also seen other people doing other various things with FreeDOS, not quite so much these days, but back in, the big popularity was like around 98, 99, 2000, 2001. And yeah, you could actually go to the airport, and you could actually see, there was a time that I was there early in the morning, and I actually saw an airport, it was a small regional airport, that had the displays about arrivals and things. I actually watched it boot up, and there was the FreeDOS kernel message in there, and I was like, wow, I didn't expect that. I mean, it came up too fast, I couldn't take a picture of it. There was a video that somebody also shared on YouTube of, it's either Ukraine or Russia. And they, I'm sure not legally, got into one of those control stations for a rail line, passenger rail, and booted the machine that was in there, which if you pause at just the right minute, it disappears so fast. But if you pause at just the right minute, you can actually see the FreeDOS kernel message come up on this machine. It was a Dell machine, and you can just see it barely pops up before it comes into the graphical application. Because what it was actually doing was displaying messages, or playing messages, or distributing messages to the different rail cars on the line. And so this is, I'm not saying that like this is a big critical feature, but it was basically like we recorded messages for like, we're going to have a change in service, scheduled service after December 1st or something like that. It was like those kinds of messages, what I understood it was. But yeah, you actually do see people that were running FreeDOS in some sort of production capacity. The coolest one, there are 2 of them that were really cool. One of them was a guy at NASA who never told me what he did with it. But there is a guy at NASA who at one point was running FreeDOS or something. That was cool. Another one was somebody made and sold pinball machines back in the early 2000s that ran FreeDOS to manage the display on the back of the machine. The only way, he obviously wouldn't tell me how the specifics work, but the only way I can imagine that would like work really, really well is if like every bumper and every little target on the thing was like registering a keystroke or something. I could write an application for that today. But I mean, that was really cool to watch that happen. So Yeah, you actually do find people who are running FreeDOS. So yeah.
I imagine you're familiar with Bill Gates' memoir that just came out, and it ends right on the edge of that era where he's creating DOS. Have you read that, and have you had any engagement from Bill Gates? He seems to be very nostalgic at this point. I'm curious if he's a member of your, secretly a member of your Facebook group.
I haven't. So yeah, the question was about Bill Gates and his memoir that came out recently, for example. And you know, I haven't read the memoir. I'm aware of it, source code, so I'm aware that it was out there. I don't know that he's used FreeDOS. I have actually tried to reach out to him a couple of times to do an interview, which I thought would be really cool. And he has obviously ghosted me. There's no way he's going to respond to that. But when we did start FreeDOS way back in 1994, I got an email from somebody with a Microsoft.com email address saying, "You don't know what you're doing. This is so stupid. The next version of Windows will blow you away." So there was somebody at Microsoft that obviously probably shouldn't have sent that email. I'm sure their boss was very happy about that. But no, I've never actually talked to like Bill Gates or anybody officially asked about it. Yeah.
Okay, I love that you mentioned new features and releases because that's a great way to keep open sources relevant. But my question is, as you imagine the next generation of FreeDOS, is there anything that you would retain or reinvent? Are there any new releases or extensions that you would consider incorporating or even drivers?
We are always looking at things that we can do in FreeDOS. So the question was about the next version of FreeDOS, and kind of always thinking about new versions. And there's no like roadmap for what the next version has to entail. But we are always looking at what's out there, what's coming new.